everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. Hey everyone. At Zone to Speak, I know how important it is to stay healthy, strong, and ready for every ride, workout, and adventure. That's why I'm sharing some amazing discounts on products I personally love, designed to support your health, performance, and overall well-being, whether you are an athlete or just looking to feel your best. Cyclists, their smart pump is a game changer. Compact, efficient, and perfect for keeping your tires road and gravel ready. It's also ideal for travel. You can take it on trips and skip the CO2 canister. Get 10% off the smart pump and 5% off everything else. 15% off down the road cycling gear. Their gear is beautifully designed and performance ready. Perfect for long rides, adventures, and everyday style on the bike. 15% off New Zest. Fuel your body with clean, plant-based nutrition. Their Clean Lean protein provides a high-quality, easy digestible protein source with no artificial additives. Perfect for recovery and sustained energy. 15% off Oleos. Oleos offers powerful wellness shots made with adaptogens, nootropics, and functional nutrients to support performance, focus, and recovery. I take Oleos daily in the lead up to any of my races and have the pre-ride and recovery shots ready for the weekend's big training rides. If you are looking for a clean, effective boost, Oleos is it. 10% off Cold Aid. High-quality supplements to support your health, from multivitamins to probiotics, collagen, and more. I personally take the women's fermented multivitamin and creatine, and I feel great with them. No nausea, just steady energy and support for recovery and daily health. 10% off Clearly Not Coffee, a delicious coffee alternative made from functional ingredients like mushrooms, maca, cinnamon, and rhodiola, designed to give you calmer energy, sharper focus, and immune support. Honestly, I can't live without it anymore. It's been such a boost of energy and has helped me navigate perimenopause with more balance and ease. 35% off Frey Skincare, made for active lifestyles. Designed for skin that sweats, they're all natural, vegan, and cruelty-free products keep your skin protected and fresh. I have been using Frey for about 10 years and my skin stays young and has never had a breakout since. You can find all the discounts listed in the episode description. Just use code ZONE2SPEAK at checkout to unlock the savings and let these incredible products support your health and performance. Now, let's get into the episode. Gear Talk is back. In this edition of Zone to Speak, we are diving into the latest and greatest from the tech side of the cycling world. I'm joined once again by the ever knowledgeable Aaron Borrill, cycling tech journalist, for a fresh round of insights, hot takes, and gear geekery. We'll dive into the nuts and bolts of the real-world essentials like smart pumps, layering strategies for unpredictable conditions, tubeless valves, and gravel tire choices. We'll also talk about the value versus performance debate. Are high-end components really worth it, or can budget-friendly alternatives from lesser-known Chinese brands hold their own? Let's talk gear. Aaron, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Juliana. Always good to be on the podcast and to talk everything cycling. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And what better way to start off than talking about cycling pumps or smart pumps, to be specific. So for me, I've got different opinions on pumps and pump strategy. Obviously, I've got a whole lot here. I use floor pumps to top up my tires, to seat my tubeless tires. I carry a mini pump with me, and I've actually got quite a few smart pump options I've been testing over the last few months. And perhaps for our listeners, it's worth explaining in detail what a smart pump is.
Good idea.
Yeah, so it's a small sort of square like device that you can carry in your pocket. It's a type of pump. It features basic inflation. It often incorporates technology for convenience and accuracy. And these pumps include features like an LED display, which shows you your pressure readout, your pressure settings. Most of them have an auto stop technology. So if you want to get in the exact pressure. So for argument's sake, 40 psi, you input 40 psi, it inflates the tire and it stops at 40 psi. So you know what you got. You can also use it to double up to check that your tire pressure is correct. And some of them also double up as a power bank and even a torch in certain scenarios. The only drawback on something like this is there is a battery that drives this pump, obviously, and those have varying amounts of time depending on factors such as the pump size, the battery capacity, and the usage habit. So how often you use that, perhaps on your ride if you puncture or at home. And generally, these devices can inflate a couple of tires a couple of times with a little bit of power to spare. To give you a scenario, you could be out on a road ride or gravel ride, and you do have a tubeless setup. For example, you have a puncture, your tubeless sealant seals everything, but you've lost a little bit of pressure. You would usually use a hand pump, which they work really, really well, but often depending on how much pressure you've lost, it can be quite a physical and demanding exercise. It can be quite awkward as well, depending on the size of the hose. And if it's winter, you're really going to struggle with your hands. So that's where these smart pumps come in handy, especially winter. They're not that heavy. I think the heaviest one that I've had on test is 160 grams. So it's not that much, really. You can put it in your pocket. You can put it on a bike bag. Some of the new bikes have onboard storage, so you can open up, put it in the down tube storage. And these essentially can pump up your tire in probably a minute to 2 minutes, depending on how deflated they are. Really, really good devices. Some of the models I've tested and ones that I'm personally impressed with is the Cyclists Tiny Electric Pump. There's a Silka Electrico Mini Inflator, and there's the Topic e-Booster Digital Electric Pump. That's probably a little bit more comprehensive, a little more heavier. But the Cyclists Tiny Electric Pump is probably one that's on the top of my list. That's one that I generally advise to people asking me for the one that I suggest. And it's around 60 euros, 70 pounds. Depending on where you get that. So there are lots of deals out there online. You just need to browse and you can find something really good. So
they're actually a friend of the podcast and there is a discount. So I didn't even tell you. So I'm glad you said that. There's 10% just for the pump. Everything else on Cycle Plus is 5%. But I used that one and actually it was completely drained and I was in the middle of nowhere. I had to use it and it took very little time to charge it with my power bank. I mean, luckily I had everything because if you don't have a power bank, then you're out of luck. But it didn't take long to charge it again and then pump the tire and get going.
Yeah, I mean, they work really well. Like I said, I use it mainly when it's the colder time of the year, especially when you got to get your hands out the gloves and sometimes you can't really operate a pump. And I've had many bad experiences with CO2 inflators. They generally work really well, but the little adapter that you plug it into or screw it into, those get worn out pretty quickly. And I've been out a couple of times where I've been stranded because I only had the CO2 canister and adapter with me and I couldn't inflate the tire. And that's the worst feeling ever. So
yeah, in summer, me, the CO2 is just, luckily I haven't used enough times. And then every time I would have to use, I'm always like, oh my gosh, if I do this wrong, I'm out of it. Because if you do it wrong, then there's no way, sometimes if you don't have the tool or even with the tool, sometimes you can't stop it from blowing out.
Yeah.
And
So I would suggest from my personal experience and usage, I use a mini pump during summer. Um, they work really well, especially if you find something that works with you that has a long enough hose. Because the problem with those mini pumps is the hose is sometimes too short. You start pumping rigorously and it actually
Mm.
bends the valve and breaks everything.
Oh,
It's happened
okay.
quite a few times to people I know. So you got to find something with an extendable hose that you can push back into the pump. That's something you need to look for. Otherwise you can use a smart pump and just carry it on you always. So you can either put that in probably a saddlebag under your saddle, in your pocket, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
in your sort of down tube storage.
Yeah, they're quite easy to pack.
Yeah, but it shouldn't. The name smart pump shouldn't put people off. I think technology is there to be embraced and to be used, and I encourage people to play around with it before going on a ride. Use it to inflate a tire at home so that if you're in the scenario where you are punctured, you perhaps in an area that you aren't familiar with and you start panicking and then you don't know how to use the pump. You got this little square with you with a digital screen and you don't know how to use it. So
Yeah.
it's just to make sure that you prepare for those situations. Try it out, test it out, see how long it takes to charge. Look at all the features, play with it. And some people use bar, some people use PSI. So you need to make sure that you get those settings right.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. And also, what do you think about? I think I was thinking it would be a great thing for the super geek ones that are crazy about PSI and what pressure on gravel and road. And sometimes a lot of gravel riders go on the road as well. So I thought it would be really cool, easy way to change your tire pressure. Because, with the manual pump, it, like you said, it's can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. Reliable, but
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little bit of a
yeah.
pain in the
That's
ass.
actually that's actually a good point you mentioned. Those handheld mini pumps don't have a gauge on them. So you kind of going on feel and you can never pinch a tire or push a tire and know exactly what pressure's in. That's where these smart pumps come in. It can tell you the exact pressure you're running. So if you do geek out over that pressure and you need to have it at a specific PSI, that's going to do the trick for you because you're not going to ride around with a hand pump and then a digital gauge that has the best of everything put in. Obviously, it needs to fit in with your sort of cycling lifestyle and how you like to carry things on the bike or on you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but speaking about operating it in winter, being working with a handheld pump or mini pump in winter, I think it directs us nicely into clothing layering. And clothing layering is very important during the shoulder season, so autumn and spring, and then going into winter. It's something I learned the hard way. So as a South African coming to the United Kingdom back in 2019, leaving summer, so it was February 2019, leaving a really hot summer in South Africa, 35 degrees Celsius every single day, landing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, very, very awesome weather, landing in the UK and snowing. Never
Man,
seen snow before in my
February in the
life.
UK.
Yeah, really, really hard.
Yeah.
Had never seen snow before in my life, and we were greeted with snow. And I love riding my bike outdoors as a South African. I had to embrace the smart trainer and riding indoors, as the years went on. But when I first got to the UK, I didn't have that luxury and I was ready to ride outside. And I thought I had the clothing to help me get through my first ride. And I didn't. South
Wow.
African winter clothing is very different to the Northern Hemisphere winter clothing. And one thing you learn very quickly in the Northern Hemisphere is the art of layering, because it is an art. Um,
So educate us.
so the main aim of layering or riding in winter, it's a multi-layered approach. So to start with, it's mainly your core that you need to keep warm. Any decent thermal bib tight is going to work for you. So that would be personal experience and going for a company that you usually use. So your bib shorts, if it was ASOS or Q36.5, you can get something similar, pretty much exactly the same. item, just with extended length to give you that warmth. Something that's nice and thermal with a bit of ventilation. Obviously, an overshoe as well, which is an overshoe cover, which is very important. So, when it comes to the layering, what you need is an undervest, which has moisture wicking properties, something that can sort of wick away all the moisture, has decent ventilation. Then you need a middle layer, which would come in the form possibly of a jersey, which is going to help you for your insulation. And then you want to wear a jacket, which is probably going to take the form of something that's going to have windproof features, weatherproof features, so water repellent or completely waterproof. There's many options out there. These things you need to play around with. So a lot of riders, they like having that skin tight approach, even with their layering. So everything is really tight on their arms and on their body and or their torso. And the problem with that is you can still get really hot and sweaty very easily. So what I tend to do, and this might not work from one cyclist to the other, but I will upsize my jacket. So there's a lot more sort of breathing room in between the insulation layer and the jacket layer, and that space helps warm air flow throughout the jacket, and it's that warm air that gets trapped inside that keeps you warm. It's a different story if you do puncture and you have to get off the bike and it's maybe 0 degrees or -5. You're going to get cold. There's no clothing out there that's going to prevent you from getting cold, or when that sweat starts getting to the point of freezing. Unfortunately, I haven't found anything that can solve that solution. But if you don't happen to puncture and you're on the move, if you can layer your clothing so that you can wick away that moisture, have a bit of ventilation to get rid of that heat, that's the best way to approach that. And obviously, there's a couple of other ancillary items of clothing that you can pair with the clothing on your body. That could be a buff for your neck and your face to keep your face warm, some kind of riding beanie under your helmet, the overshoes, as I explained. You get various types of overshoes. You get your aerodynamic ones, you get your waterproof ones, you get your rain resistant ones. That's also something that you're going to have to play around and experiment with, so that it can, whatever works or suits you. You also want to go for potentially brighter colors so that you're more visible, because in the UK it's grey and gloomy in the winter. There's sometimes a lot of mist and visibility isn't great. So I tend to go for the Lumo colors, just so I can be seen. I'd rather be seen than not seen. And then probably the one item of clothing, I'm calling it an item of clothing. It's more of an accessory, but I'm not calling it an item of clothing, that I learned the hard way, is gloves. So if your hands are cold, you cannot operate the controls or the handlebars.
Yeah.
I learned it the hard way. I thought that any kind of long finger glove was going to work. And it got to the point where I had to pull over. I was almost in tears with the pain that I had in my hands. I couldn't feel anything, couldn't operate anything. It was absolutely intense pain. Had to experiment with quite a few different glove designs over the years. What I found is that you can get many gloves out there that can keep your hands warm on the bike. But what happens is that comes at the expense of dexterity. So you'll get a really thick glove, but you can't move the fingers, or it's one of those lobster-style gloves and you can't grip anything. Yeah. So, you need to find something that follows the same approach as the layering of the clothes on you. So you need sort of like an undervest style inner glove. You need insulated layer, and then you need some kind of soft shell on top of the glove. There's something really nice that Santini sells. They've got a merino wool, very lightweight inner glove that you put on first, and then you put that into a deep winter glove. Dexterity is probably as good. It's a deep winter glove. I think it's the Santini deep winter glove. It's as good as anything else on the market. The two work really well together. if you're not a fan of Santini, or you've got your own particular glove from Assos or Sportful or something like that, these merino wool inner gloves can pair with anything else. It's a very fine glove. It's hard to explain. It's almost like a glove that someone in a jewelry store will use to pick up like diamonds or the rings or whatever. But it's just made from a very fine merino wool. So if
Wow,
you
I
can get, if
love that tip because, yeah, I'm always cold. And yeah, having this inner layer sounds like a perfect combination to put under
yeah,
whatever glove that you prefer.
yeah,
Yeah,
it works really well. And then the glove that you choose, I suggest having one that is also nice and spacious inside, because if you can keep that air around the hand nice and warm, your hands are going to stay warm. Um, Obviously, this depends on how long you're going to be riding outside. If your ride is longer than 3-4 hours, eventually the cold is going to penetrate that and will start on your fingertips, which
yeah,
really hurts. But the body of the hand is still going to stay nice and warm, and it's going to still going to give you the ability to grip the bars and control the brakes. Um, so yeah, it's you got to find what works for you, and most of the time that is going for products that are within the brand that you enjoy. So whatever the brand of clothing you use, I would look at their winter range, and I would use potentially autumn to start experimenting. Spring, most of the time it's much warmer, but when you go into autumn, you're going to get a day that is probably under 5 degrees, and then the next day it could be 19 degrees. So I would use autumn to experiment. Usually you can find some really good clearance deals. There's still winter clothing in stock. Most of the brands and the shops want to get rid of that so they can clear it to get the new season in, and you can get
yeah,
really good deals. So it's a lot of experimentation. I've found what works for me. A lot of the Italian brands are really good for obvious reasons. It gets really cold, and they've done their engineering. They're really good at their clothing design and the science behind it. There's a lot of like technical know-how that goes into those garments. Just wearing any kind of jacket, it's not going to keep you warm. I was of the opinion, if I can just put on a jacket or a raincoat or some kind of leg warmer or arm warmer, it's going to keep me warm. No, it's not. It's not going to keep you warm. It's very important to look at those
yeah.
materials and how those materials work with your body and with the other garments that you're wearing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you said, something now like that works with your body because you also need mobility on the bike, like you said,
Yes.
with the gloves. And something else you'll touch on that I think is super important, which is something I do also learn the hard way, is ordering a size up of my regular
Yes.
size for the outer jacket because I think it's important to have that ventilation as well. I mean, you're layering, first of all, so you're going to be a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, I think one big mistake that a lot of people do too is just putting on any jacket because they think it's warm, and it is, but then you're sweating it. And it's just like a car. If you're sweating that much, it means your engine is overheating and it's not going to work. And then you're opening the jacket, then you're getting cold,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it defeats the entire purpose.
Yeah. It's all about the ventilation and the insulation and the weather protection and how those three work together. And there are a lot of solutions and options out there. Most of it is pricey, but I see this. If you're an avid cyclist and you like going outside, and the weather isn't going to change your mind, but you have a problem spending X amount of money, you actually need to rethink your idea and see it more as an investment, because there's a saying I learned in the UK when I moved here, was that there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad cycling clothing. Something
Yeah,
like that. I might have got it
yeah.
wrong.
I think it is something like that. Yeah, I heard it as well now that you said it. Yeah, and it's true. If you have the right gear, you're fine.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, but
obviously,
it's
it's better a beautiful, sunny, dry day, but you know we can't pick the weather, so gotta work with what we got.
yeah, and it's most of the stuff is easy to wash. It dries pretty quickly too. So I would start with one outfit and then slowly build that up so you've got two or three. Yeah, and then I don't really suffer from cold feet or cold legs. It's mainly my hands take tremendous strain.
Me
Um,
too. Hands and chest. I
yeah,
do
hands
this. Yeah.
and ears. You can act. There's also like headbands that you can use to protect your ears from the cold.
Oh
So
yeah. No, I have those even in the spring. Like my ears are always cold. It's pathetic.
yeah,
But
and,
I'm
and I
tropical, so
yeah, yeah, I'm the same, exactly the same thing. So I struggle in the cold, but it's not going to prevent me from riding outside. What's going to prevent me from riding outside is the lack of light, which is a problem. So if I can get a ride in the morning during winter and it's not raining, I don't mind the cold. Just as long as there's decent light outside and people can see me. Um, but obviously the reverse is applicable to sort of summer clothing. While you don't layer for summer clothing, something that isn't taken into consideration is the UV protection rating of the clothing. And a lot of the riders I know that will go to Spain in summer on training camps or the Canary Islands, they wear a mesh jersey, forget to put sort of sunscreen on their torso and their back, and they get absolutely baked. So you need to look at the quality of the jersey. I know it's going to be warm. You want to get out there, you want to enjoy the sun, but you need to also protect your skin, and protect your torso and your back, because those are areas you can't see. You can't see on your back, and
yeah.
sun can also present many problems. People with various skin cancers and melanomas need to look at your clothing and then what kind of sun protection you use.
Yeah, good point. And also, I have started using a lot in the summer a base layer as well under my jersey because it adds another layer of protection, but also absorbs a lot of the sweat. So
Yes,
my
exactly.
jersey is not like all sweaty. Um, and I love the brands that are doing now long sleeve, like super light long sleeve jerseys for the summer because then it protects your skin, and I love that. Some people hate because it feels like it's gonna be so hot, but actually it isn't.
Yeah,
I like it.
yeah. It just depends. Yeah, I mean, it's going to affect the sun is going to affect different people differently. So I'm of Mediterranean descent. My mother's Italian. I've got I don't know what you would call it, like a
Olive
olive type
skin,
skin.
yeah,
I don't burn in the UK. I didn't really burn in South Africa, so I'm pretty resistant. But at the same time, you don't know the long-term damage of UV and what it can do.
yeah,
So, it's different if you go out one day and you don't put the sunscreen on, but it's the cumulative effect of what it's doing to your skin that you need to consider.
yeah,
And there are a lot of people also. You mentioned the long sleeve jersey. There's a lot of riders who will use a UV protected sort of arm, not an arm
it's a,
warmer, but some kind of arm
yeah,
protector, if you want to call it
yeah,
that. It's the same thing as an arm warmer, but it's light, it's breathable, there's a lot of ventilation, it keeps you cool, it protects your arms.
yeah, yeah. I seen those. Yeah, I had one before, and now I'm just wearing the jersey. I'm not a fan of the leg warmers or the arm warmers. I feel like it just hugs me so tight. But again, it's all about preference, right? Some people like
It
that because
is,
they can
yeah.
take it out. I like the long sleeve jersey. So like, just like I like the long, what do you say? Pant bibs, trouser bibs.
Yeah, the bib longs, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of
Tights, yeah.
arm warmers. I mean, leg
Yeah.
warmers.
Yeah, the problem with the leg warmers and the arm warmers, that's also something you need to shop around with and look for the right fit, because a lot of them, a lot of companies see them as an afterthought and something just they can make from offcuts really quickly. And I find
Yeah,
that the the gel layer, or the piece that sort of fastens up, it is too tight. And on some people, it can create this kind of like sausage looking
yeah,
indentation.
that's my
And
legs.
people don't like that. It is
Yeah,
something
hate.
to be self-conscious over.
And it
Um,
hurts.
It does.
like,
It does.
yeah, when you're
And
pedaling, I don't like it.
it looks strange as well, like
Yeah,
through the bib shorts.
yeah,
If that was elasticated and had a long elasticated layer that could actually hug and form the leg and spread the tissue, that's the best way to look at it. And there are a couple of options out there, but it's the same with bib shorts and bib tights. Some have a really really tight elasticated cuff, which digs in. It doesn't look nice. It doesn't feel good.
it's true.
Yeah, and there are others that have a much sort of a longer elasticated cuff, which it has various. I don't know how to explain it really, but the tension of that elasticated cuff sort of disappears the higher you go up. So it supports the skin and evenly spreads around the skin. Those are the
Yeah,
best options for me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I agree.
Cool. So the next thing we were going to talk about are tubeless valves. And tubeless valves, I know it sounds like something really small and something people shouldn't worry about, but a tubeless valve can make or break your tubeless setup.
Yeah,
I already spoke about how when you're inflating your wheels roadside, if you've had a puncture, depending on what you're using, that can actually break the valve stem. But
yeah,
a really good valve is also going to improve the airflow when you're pumping up your tires, allow you to put tubular sealant in with ease, and hopefully not clog up the valve core. So there are a couple of,
exactly. That's
yeah.
what I was, because I'm not that great. And every time my husband says, you need to top up your sealant, I'm always immediately freaked out because I'm afraid of doing the whole quote unquote operation with the valve and the sealant.
I I've done the whole putting sealant in the wheel through the valve, but I don't do that anymore. I will once the tire's seated and I've used the tire for a while, or even when I've done my tubeless setup, I will just open the side of the tire, um, unseat it with the tire lever, just a small amount. I'll pour the sealant in,
Okay.
pop it back into place, and because most of the beads have already been set through the initial tubeless setup, it seals pretty quickly. And then it just helps the valve in terms of durability and longevity. It helps it last a lot longer. So if you're looking at your traditional tubeless valve, it's typically a Presta valve. And it functions by using a spring-loaded core within a stem that's secured to the rim via like a rubber stopper or gasket. I don't know what you want to call that exactly, but the core can be removed for topping up with sealant. For increased airflow, if you want to seat the tire, you can remove the valve core, and then you can pump you can use one of the pumps with the canister that can blast the air in to seat the tire to seat the tires quickly. And they're designed to be airtight when inflated, preventing air leaks. But the one downside is clogging of the valve core and just deterioration of the valve core over time. So this is your traditional valve for those who want to see. It's got the valve stem, and then this is the core. This is removable. I don't think I can do that by hand, no. But that can be removable. It is removable. So even if that did get clogged, you can always put another valve core in. But sometimes you get clogging at the base too. I've used many devices actually, or I've had many tools over the years that I've kept with me for my mountain bike stage racing and gravel racing that actually has provision for spare valve core, because sometimes, or even a spare valve I will carry on me, because sometimes if you're doing a mountain bike stage race or a race and you're in a remote area and you get a rock strike directly on the valve, it can break the valve off.
Yeah.
In some instances it dislodges the valve core, and then you're sitting there without any tools. You might have a tube with you that you can inflate, which is, it's going to help get you home. But in most scenarios, mountain bike stage races or mountain bike marathon races, the terrain is so harsh that you're probably going to puncture on that tube anyway. So I suggest either keeping a spare valve in your saddlebag or just the valve core. I mean, it weighs nothing really. But yeah, that's the basics of the tubeless Presta valve. Now there are several new options out there, or new designs of the tubeless valve, and one comes from Reserve. It's called the Reserve Fillmore valve. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've heard about it, but I've got one here. So it essentially looks like a normal valve. So you got your area that goes through the rim,
Yeah.
fastens it, creates a seal. But inside, instead of a valve core, you have this poppet valve mechanism which runs the entirety of the valve. So you
Wow.
can hear and see it here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's made by Reserve wheels. It's a tubeless valve which eliminates the need for your traditional valve core. It utilizes this poppet valve mechanism, as I mentioned, where it's essentially a steel plunger with an O-ring at the bottom, which is pulled into the base when the cap is tightened. So this cap essentially fastens that in place, pulls it up so it's secure, and at the same time, if you loosen it a little, you can tap on that
And
to
and
remove
would
air.
that be where you also can inflate the tire, or
Yes.
you need to take the top
No,
out?
no, you need to take the top off to
Okay.
inflate the
Okay.
tire. You can essentially just press on this like a normal valve
Okay.
to release air, but you can sometimes release too much air. So I suggest you use the lid or the valve cover, because it's still got the top of the plunger still has a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of thread in it. And
Okay.
if you look inside the valve cap, there's a little small section that's threaded too, and that's designed to thread onto the plunger. So not only does this valve protect the top piece, and when it fastens on, it holds everything in place, but the top part that it gets threaded into also operates as a means of you releasing air. So you can release it incrementally rather than releasing too much.
Got it.
So it works quite well.
And does it work in any tire? I mean,
This any
wheels?
room, yes, this
Yeah,
can
yeah.
work in any room. I've got this fitted to a set of reserve wheels, but I've also got it fitted to regular. It's compatible with any room. And
Amazing.
obviously it comes in different valve stem sizes. Um, yeah, the main aim with this was just to improve airflow, to prevent clogging with sealant. I'm yet to get any of these clogged with sealant. It's a different approach, and you just once you got your head around it, um, and you work out how it works, it's a pretty simple way of operation. But it's a new thought process around the valve. There's another player that's entered the space, Markov. Markov recently released the big bore valves, and the big bore valve, um, also it's tubeless in operation, and it works by utilizing a lever operated ball valve to control airflow. I don't have one of those with me, unfortunately. It was I had a set sent to me, put it on a test bike. Test bike went back, and I forgot to take my valves out.
Oops.
Yeah, one of those
So
things.
you
But
still need to test and then let us know which one you think it's best.
yeah,
I don't know. Is there a
yeah.
big price difference between the two of them, Mokoff and Reserve Fillmore?
Um, I'd be lying if I told you I knew the exact price difference. I they work they work really really well. If you're meticulous about this type of thing and you like a really, really clean setup and you want the same tire pressures every single time and you don't want to be hung up with pumping up your tire and then sometimes the air doesn't go in, or the gauge doesn't reflect straight away, or it gets clogged and you can't get anything in, I would suggest going for something like this. If you're really good when it comes to cleaning and putting in new sealant and making sure everything is 100% clean, removing valves, taking all the latex sealant out, you're probably not going to have a problem. A normal valve's going to do the job just fine. But over time, you are going to run into a lot of issues with the valve core clogging up, and eventually sometimes the valve stem itself deteriorates,
Yeah, I feel
and
like I
breaks
need one
too.
of those.
Yeah, it's worth trying. I personally like the Reserve Fillmore valves. I've been using them for about 2 years now, and the improved flow it's absolutely unreal. letting air out and putting air in. You just need to ensure you keep the valve caps because they work with these proprietary valve caps. You don't want to lose one of those. You could essentially use something else, but I don't think the valve will work 100% without those because that valve actually pulls the bottom part into the base of the wheel.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I mean the big bore valves they're pretty new. They've been around nearly a year now. And yeah, it's the same principle as the Fillmore. The design just eliminates the need to remove a valve core for sealant, filling and inflation. So it's just a faster, easier process, and it's just something people don't think about when it comes to a tubeless setup. They want to make sure that they've got the right sealant and the right rim tape and the right wheel in terms of the width so that it can work with the right tire. But the humble little valve is often overlooked. And yeah, I mean,
True.
without the valve, you're not going to have air in your tire. So yeah, it also just harks back to what I said about trying to ensuring that you carry one with you at all times. It's you never want to be on the side of the road and you're stuck. I
Yeah,
always
because
try
valves are
to,
also so fragile. It's so
yeah,
fragile. I mean, it's rare, obviously, that a rock will hit you, but a lot of times, I mean, how many times my valves got clogged with sealant or the little tips like twisted because
that
of a
happens a
fall
lot.
or a
Yeah,
rock or
yeah,
something, and then you just have to keep on changing them. And yeah, I'm not that great. Like you said, if you're that great with cleaning and everything, and I sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm gonna ride again tomorrow, so I'm not gonna clean anything.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean,
So
I'm also one that will always ensure, regardless of what valve it is, even if it's your traditional Presta tubeless valve, that I will always ride with valve caps on. There are a lot of people who don't because of the aesthetics. They don't like the aesthetics of that, but
I'm
you
rolling
just
my
need
eyes.
you just need one stray stone or something or some kind of errant, piece of furniture from the road that gets, tossed up by a car. And yes, it might be 1 in a million. I don't know the exact statistic, but you just need that to knock the top of the valve core, and it can
Exactly.
be damaged. So a small little plastic valve cover might just be enough protection to deflect that. Uh, and yeah, I mean, maybe for road, maybe it's taking things a little bit too far. But I mean, you're not going to be saving any weight really. And also some of the valve caps are really there's quite a few that are quite nifty in that they double up as a valve core remover.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
you get some from Envy. I think the Envy valves there's a built-in valve core remover which is quite handy as well. So
Cool.
I I'm one who keeps valve caps, and
Me too.
granted they complement the color scheme of my bike. I won't go for something yellow or red or something strange, but yeah, maybe if my bike was red, I'd go for a red valve cap. But yeah, I would just keep everything black. But it's just small things like that you need to consider because you might not have a roadside mechanical now, or perhaps you've just been blessed enough not to experience one yet in your entire riding career. But when it does happen and you realize you don't have X, Y, and Z with you, that's when the panic sets in,
Yeah.
So rather have everything with you than not. And that's why I will always carry a chain breaker, a spare link. I will carry all sorts of things for my punctures because sometimes once I've actually tore a tire, one of my road tires,
Wow.
and that obviously couldn't seal for obvious reasons. And I did have a tube. I didn't at the time know how bad the cut was. So when I inflated the tire, part of the tube pressed through the cut on the tire, so it was bubbling through. And I didn't have anything with me, but actually I did have something with me. I didn't realize it at the time. I had a piece of like cardboard folded up that I was using to prevent the valve on my spare tube from possibly rubbing into the tube. Um, and eventually I realized I've got this piece of cardboard here that's been doubled up. I can put that in the tire and use that to prevent the tube pushing through. And I was about 40 kilometers away from home
Yeah,
and I got
that's
home. So
wow,
it's just
nice.
about, yeah, I would
Yeah,
carry
because you don't want
something.
to walk those 40K, or I mean, maybe
No,
sometimes you
no.
can
I
have a
don't want to
call,
make
call
I don't
someone,
want to
but
make the call. I don't want to make the call to my wife. She's not going to be happy. But yeah, you can carry something called a tire boot, which is essentially what I used, a piece of cardboard, but this is something with an adhesive that you can just stick
that's
into the
cool.
tire.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
so
Yeah.
there's something from that you can get them from Park Tool, or I just make sure that I used to ride with a container that would go into a bottle cage with like a
Yeah, I
removable
have that.
top. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are really cool. It keeps everything. It's a little
Yeah.
heavy, but I mean, it's got a tube in there. It has a CO2 inflator. It's got an extra valve. It's got all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And then
The
I'll still
smart
carry,
pump.
yeah, I'll still keep the pump with me too. So I've got
Yeah.
absolutely everything in there. So it's worth looking at your riding strategy and then what you can use to prevent issues in the long run, because eventually you will be confronted with a puncture or a broken chain or a cut or something. You just need to have those
Yeah.
bits and pieces on you. I know
Yeah.
I've digressed here and gone completely in another direction,
All
but
good.
yeah,
It's
I think.
all worth bits of advice.
Yeah, but I mean, it does again take us into tires, which is just perfect. I mean, I
Exactly.
didn't,
Perfect segment.
yeah, I didn't purposely do this, but it has taken us into tires again. And I know we have spoken quite a bit on tires. I think in both previous podcasts we've spoken about tires and gravel tires, but maybe it's worth us looking at it in a little bit more detail, because it's also something that is misunderstood and possibly not taken as seriously as it should be. A tire is not, I'm just going to go get this tire and put it on my bike. There is no such thing as a one size fits all approach to tires, more
Yeah.
specifically gravel tires, because the gravel genre is developing so quickly that we don't know what's going to be happening in the next 2 months in terms of wheels and tire sizes and suspension and all sorts of things.
With tread patterns, I mean, the list goes on.
That's absolutely crazy. So the attributes you need to look at when it comes to any tire, but let's focus on gravel tires for now, is your wheel size, the internal width. A lot of the new wheels are coming with internal widths of up to 27 millimeters wide, which is massive. And the new Zip 303 Explorer SW wheels have a 32 millimeter internal width, and that's massive. It's going to have a bearing on what tire you use and how the tire is shaped on that particular rim profile. And then obviously, or lastly, terrain affects tire choice to a massive degree. And that's going to come down to experimentation. And that also brings in pressures, sealants, possibly even tire inserts on the long run. I know tires are an expensive component, but
Yeah.
again, it is the component that's in contact with the surface you're riding. And without traction, you're going to go down. Without the right sidewall protection, you're going to have a cut and puncture. And without the right tread pattern, you're not going to have any grip at all. So it's something that you need to experiment with. You need to look at your budget. You need to look at what type of riding you do, the intended use of your riding, and then take it from there. So, as mentioned in the previous podcast, wider is definitely the way to go when it comes to gravel. I know it sounds counterintuitive and there's more of an emphasis on weight, but that needs to be ignored, because there's more to lose using a light, narrow, harder tire with less sidewall protection than a heavier, stronger, wider one. Because the person with the heavier, stronger, wider tire is going to get to the finish line before you when you're trying to fix your tire on the side of the road, or when you're bouncing around down a corrugated dirt road because you
Yep.
don't have traction and you don't
Yep.
have the right tire for your wheel. So those are some things you need to look at. Something interesting which I saw on Friday. I was watching the short track race, the men's elite short track race in Overmesto, the cross country. Christopher Blevins of the Specialized Factory Racing Team, or Specialized Racing Team, was using a gravel tire on his mountain bike, which blew my
Wow.
mind. Yeah, so
Wow.
he was using a 2 inch. That's about 50 millimeters, maybe 49 point something millimeter
Wow.
gravel tire on his S-Works Epic. He won. He actually won the race using the
Wow.
gravel tire. And it actually just shows you the versatility and how capable these gravel tires are. I know it was a less technical course. There was a bit of tarmac involved, hard pack gravel, but it just shows you where these tires are headed, what the thinking is behind them, and what the racers of different disciplines are thinking about these tires. He wasn't the only one. There were a few other riders that were using gravel tires too. Evie Richards was using a Pirelli Cinturato gravel RC tire
I
on
like
hers as
those.
well. They're very, very good. And what we're seeing now with gravel is that the tire widths that we're using in gravel are what the standard tire width of mountain bike racing was about 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago.
Interesting.
So it's like gravel and mountain bike have converged. They've become
Merged. Yeah.
come full circle almost. And we're finding ourselves in a very interesting space. Because I was still, up until recently, I was still of the school of thought that narrower, not 100% narrower, like 40. I thought 40 millimeter gravel tires was the fastest. That was the way to go.
Yeah.
It was giving me a lot of feel through the frame, through the handlebars, but I was mistaking the feel for actual just really harsh impacting vibrations that were in fact slowing me down.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking. Also on one of the mountain bikes I was testing with the 2.6-inch tires, that is something I would never have thought would be quick in any way or form. And that's faster in nearly every scenario that I've been testing. So that got me thinking, what is the compromise here for me? What do I need to look at? And yes, it does depend on the riding you do. Perhaps you've got a route that has 50% tar, 50% off-road, or you do everything off-road and it's corrugated farm roads in the USA or Australia or South Africa. Then you need to start looking at what's going to give you the most comfort and the most speed, or perhaps just a balance of all those things. So the tire I've been using now that I've been testing quite a lot and I'm very, very impressed with is the Vittoria Torino dry gravel endurance tire. It's a 47 millimeter. And I found that it's a happy balance for me because it's in between the now sort of fashionable 45 and 50. There are a lot of guys going towards 50, or a lot of guys and girls going towards 50. There's still quite a few on 45 because they think that's a sweet spot for them. But the 47 millimeter on this particular tire with the tread pattern, it's got a smooth or fast rolling middle tread pattern, and then it's got a quite grippy shoulder knobs on the side, which have supplied superb grip for me in loose cornering situations. And then when the road or the gravel road does sort of straighten out, very, very, very fast. And the same can be said in tarmac situations too. So I'm pretty happy with that. Tire pressures, I have gone as low as 20 now, which is very, very low.
Wow.
On the front and rear.
Wow.
And the performance hasn't been affected. It's actually faster.
Amazing.
The only concern I have is that if I did pick up a thorn or something perhaps burped the tire because the pressure's so low, I'm going to lose so much that it's going to be unrideable, and that's got me thinking about possibly incorporating tire inserts.
I was going to ask, when do we put inserts? I mean, I did have insert once, and it was at the migration gravel race because I was terrified of having a flat because of the terrain. So tell me more. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No worries. It's going to come down to the race and the terrain, as you said, and perhaps how low you ride your pressure so that there's no sort of failure on that tire. I don't think we're at the point where we need to be worried about any kind of tire blow-offs when it comes to off-road tires.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any concerns there. But for me, the concern for me is I'm running such low pressure now that if I did have to lose pressure in a particular scenario, especially with a race like Gravel Burn that's coming up in November, I need to ensure that I'm not going to lose too much time, or best case, get myself home without having to spend too much time on the side of the road trying to fix something. So I have tire inserts on the way. And it's for tire inserts, it's also not one size fits all. You're going to have to go with a manufacturer specific tire insert that's designed to play nicely with that tire.
Yeah.
So I'm going for a Vittoria airliner, which I'm going to put in for me now. And I mean, there's probably a lot of listeners out there thinking the way I'm thinking now. Is it going to affect my performance?
Right. It's
Is it going to,
heavier.
yeah, it's heavier. What's the feel like? Is it going to feel like I'm riding a road bike from the 80s with perma tubes on? Am I going to get that same feedback, the same response? Um, I'll have to report back on that, but I'm going to be fitting those in the next week or two just to
Okay.
see how that works. I'd rather try it and I don't like it than not try it and think, I wonder if I should have gone that way. But I am confident enough in these tires that they're going to go the distance and they're not going to let me down. I've never had any issues with Vittoria tires, and I've used them across the spectrum, across discipline. I've actually only had one issue with Vittoria tires, and I think it was the end of last year in the rain. I had a time trial, a 25-mile time trial, and I had the really fast rolling Vittoria Corsa Pro Speed tires. And I was told, don't ride to the TT and don't ride back because it's been raining and the water and the rain's probably going to have, moved around thorns and bits and pieces.
But you
Rather
did it
drive.
anyways.
Yep, I didn't listen. And yeah, it did seal, but it was an absolute mess. What that sealant did to my bike and the low pressure that got me home eventually. But that's the only issue I've had. I've never had a complete flat with that. But there's a lot of other options out there that are worth looking at. Schwalbe do really, really good tires. My wife's doing gravel burn with me, and
Cool.
she's opted for the Schwalbe G1 All Round 45C.
Okay.
She's got that paired with Fulcrum Shark wheels. Was so easy to set up. What's nice about that particular wheel, it's got a particular rim bed with spokeless holes. They call it MOMAG technology.
Okay. I've seen
So
it. Yeah.
there's no holes, so there's no need for rim tape. So all you do
Nice.
is you just put the tire on. Okay, I do
Yeah.
things a little differently. I take a bit of sealant and I coat the entire rim bed. So there's a bit of wouldn't call it moisture, but a bit of liquid there that's going to help the beads pop into place. Always works for me. It was actually suggested to me by John Heisman from Victoria. I couldn't get a tire to seat on one of my bikes, and it just wasn't working. Everything was spot on. The rim tape was built up nicely. Valves were perfect. And he said, have you got any sealant in the tire yet? And I'm like, no. He's like, take the sealant you're going to be using, put a little bit on your finger, and coat the entire
Coat
rim bed,
it.
and
Nice.
then pump it up. And you don't even need to use a tubeless pump with a canister by hand. Goes in by hand.
Wow.
It's not going
Wow.
to work for every single tire and every single wheel, obviously, but for the Fulcrum wheels without the spoke holes, it went on first time. Um, and we actually just got back from a ride now. We did a gravel ride because we're testing our setups for gravel burn, and she loves that tire, that G1 tire. Um, Probably going to experiment with the G1 RS Pro, which is probably slightly lighter, little less aggressive tread. But I think for that kind of terrain that we're going to be facing, I'd go with something that's more of an all-rounder, which is what that tire is. And then another brand which is really underrated. I wouldn't say underrated, but maybe living in the shadows of the other brands is the Panaracer Gravel King X1.
Okay.
Really, really good tire. You can get that in sizes ranging from 45. You can get it in 40 or lower, but I think now that we're getting into a time where 45C is like the go-to standard tire that you need to go for.
Yeah.
45 to 50C has you covered there on the Panaracer Gravel King. Also, really good, strong sidewall, supple carcass. You can go with really low pressure too, and it just increases the ride feel. And then to touch on the tire pressure thing again, just for listeners who maybe haven't heard the previous two podcasts where we were chatting about the gear and the tires.
Yeah.
The whole idea behind lower tire pressures in any scenario and any discipline is to increase that contact patch with the road or the gravel road or the mountain bike trail. The more of that tire that is in contact with the trail, the more traction you're going to have. And at the same time, with the right tire pressure, that tire is going to act as suspension in a way, and that's going to keep the tire on the ground. If you think about it, what's happening on a really hard tire pressure is that it's not making contact on the road, and it's going to cause it to sort of skip on the surface. You're not going to be able to put the power down, and you'll probably find that if you're riding too high tire pressures on a mountain bike or gravel bike in a race, you're going to really battle to stay in a group, because everyone else is going to be able to put down the power because of the improved traction and the improved comfort,
Yeah.
and you're going to be bouncing around.
Yeah.
It's a little bit,
Wow.
yeah, it's a
People are
little
rolling and then
yes,
yeah.
and you can feel it. You can
Yeah.
absolutely feel it, and you know that compound fatigue. If you're doing a stage race, you're going to be feeling that on day 3 or 4. You just, you know, your neck, you're going to be tensing up. You need to stay relaxed, and that's going to help you stay relaxed on the bike. Slightly different if you're a road racer. You can probably go a little harder on your tire pressure. Most of the time, the roads aren't as bad. In the UK, they probably are.
Yeah, I was gonna say some tarmac is worse than gravel,
Some,
but
yes, some is, but the whole idea is to, with lower pressure, is to create a bigger footprint so that the tire and the wheel and the bike can work as a system. Traction can be improved, comfort can be improved, and then you essentially go faster for less energy, because you're going to be using less energy to put that power to propel the bike forward, or you're going to be using less power than if you were on a tire with harder tire pressure. I know it's counterintuitive, and I know you're thinking, impossible. It's not. Go try it out. Go test it. Let me know what you think. Send us some comments and feedback. I'd love to hear what people say. But there's a lot of tire guide and tire pressure charts on various websites. Most of the time, it comes down to your weight, but at the same time, that is not it's not the defining factor, because it's also the weight distribution of the bike. It's your bike fit. It's how much weight you got on the front or the rear. In most scenarios, in almost all scenarios, you're going to have less tire pressure in the front than the rear. But at the same time, you just need to play around and see what works for you. So I'm currently on 20. I don't think I'm going to go lower. I probably could. I'm about 61 kilos. So I could go lighter according to some of the charts, but it just doesn't feel right to me. I don't think I could go into the 18 psi on the front and back. I don't want to bottom out a tire, especially, you don't want to damage your wheels. That's something else to take into consideration. If you do go too low, you're going to bottom out that tire, and you can possibly hit that wheel on a rock or really hard surface, and then you crack it. So it's something that you need to explore by yourself. See what works for you. Look at your body weight. Look at what you're going to be wearing too, and if you have a hydration pack on, because that's going to increase your weight. So you've got to take everything. Helmet. I would go and weigh yourself with all your kit on, shoes, everything. Hydration pack, things in your pocket, your gels, all your nutrition. That's a good point. And then use that as your starting point, and then take it from there.
Yeah. I just going back, I might give it a try to the Victoria tires you talk so highly about. I have using Pirelli and I love them, but I don't know anything else kind of. So I might give that one a try. I want to have something that has more of the traction on the sides and rolls well on the middle, because I do a lot of jumping between road and gravel. So
so
that sounds like a good option.
It's a good option. So that's the Vittoria Torino Dry Gravel Endurance in 47, but they've also just launched the Torino T50 Mixed Gravel Endurance in 45. I actually have that here. It's the tread isn't as defined as the dry endurance, but it still has a very thin
Yeah.
centered tread
Hmm.
with smaller shoulder knobs.
Yeah.
But the one I'm using, it's slightly more pronounced on the sides, but it's a different type of gravel I'm going to be confronting. Massive corrugation roads, farm roads for hundreds of kilometers, and then like crazy sand in the corners. So the trucks, the farm vehicles, create these corrugations, and the tires push all the sand out to the side. So you need to have something that can roll well, take those corrugations well, and then grip in the looser areas. Because you can just imagine a bunch of men racing, going into a corner, going into
Yeah.
sand. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
you can picture it. It's not a pretty sight.
It's only
So,
May, but I already can't wait to talk to you once you're back from Gravel Burn. I want to hear all about it.
yeah, I'm very, very excited with that. It sold out last week. And apparently the field is 50-50. So 50% international, 50% South African. So
Wow.
it's a
That's really
massive,
cool.
massive international field. So I think it's only going to grow from here, and it's something new for the gravel rider. There's a lot of one day events and ultras, there's nothing wrong with that. Those are really cool, but this is just going to draw more of a spectacle, I feel. So, if you're looking at the founder, Kevin Vermaak, who created the Cape Epic, and we know
Yeah.
what the Cape Epic is and how um, innovative it's been in terms of race coverage, you can just imagine what we're going to be getting from Gravel Burn. And then obviously attracting those massive pro fields, having those big names, being able to,
Huge names. Yeah.
yeah, just being able to, sit at the campfire and chat to someone like Jasper Stuyven, or have supper with him at night, and just have people together, all walks of life, no egos, just really, really good racing and a great experience under an
Yeah.
African sky. And
Oh,
it's not much that's
magical. I just
nothing.
love stage race. For me, it's the best setup out there.
Yeah, and it's everything. It's going to be wildlife. There's going to just be, yeah. I haven't been back in 6 years, so it's going to be nice just to see, how things have changed in the country, and then ride a region I've never actually been to. So, and
Very
then
cool.
obviously, and then test the bike, and just see how that performs, because it's a full-on race bike. It's not a. I mean, there's a lot of blurred lines in terms of what the ultimate gravel bike is, or the ultimate gravel setup is. And in Europe, there's this sort of endurance bikepacking theme that runs
Yeah.
through a lot of the guys. So they want mounting points, they want even larger tire clearance, they want to know where they can put their bags. But I think something like a gravel stage race where it's going to be crazy average speeds. You want something that's kind of like a race thoroughbred. Um, and I'm not a Cannondale evangelist, but the geometry does really work well for me. And because my road race bike is the Super Six, the natural step for me was to get something that mimicked that geometry, but in a gravel version, and that's the Super X, which is absolutely rapid, even on the tar. You could essentially use that as a road bike if you had the
Wow.
right chainring set up front.
Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting.
You're going to
Looking forward
be
to that.
having a great time. I know it. Well, thanks for all the insights. It's always so great to hear from you and have you be part of the podcast. To all the listeners or anyone watching on YouTube, send us your feedback, send us any question you have, anything that you like us to cover. I'm sure we'll be talking to Aaron in the near future.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Juliana. Always good to be on, and I look forward to our next episode. And whatever the listeners want to know about, I'm happy to share my knowledge where I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.